The rain hammered against the windows of Nightshade Cafe with such ferocity that Mira wondered if the glass might shatter. She wiped down the counter for the third time in as many minutes, her movements mechanical, practiced. The late shift on a Tuesday night was usually dead. Pun intended, she thought wryly. But tonight felt different. The air itself seemed to hum with anticipation, as though the storm was a living thing waiting to break through the walls. "Table 7 needs a refill," Marcus called from the kitchen, his gravelly voice cutting through her thoughts. Mira grabbed the coffee pot and wound her way through the scattered tables. Only 3 were occupied, despite the dinner hour having just passed. An elderly couple sat by the window, their conversation soft and comfortable. A businessman hunched over his laptop in the corner, his tie loosened and his 5th cup of coffee going cold. And table 7. Table 7 had been occupied for the past hour by a man who hadn't ordered anything except water. He sat in the darkest corner of the cafe, where the overhead light had burned out 2 weeks ago, and Marcus kept forgetting to replace it. The shadows seemed to gather around him like old friends. Mira approached cautiously, though she couldn't have said why. There was something about him that set her nerves on edge, not in a threatening way, but in the way you might feel standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing one step forward would change everything. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. He looked up, and Mira's breath caught. His eyes were the colour of dark wine, so deep they seemed bottomless. His features were sharp and aristocratic, with high cheekbones and a jaw that could have been carved from marble. Black hair fell across his forehead in a way that suggested careful carelessness. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, but somehow looked comfortable rather than pretentious. "I'm quite content with the water, thank you," he said. His voice was smooth and cultured, with an accent she couldn't quite place. British, maybe, but older somehow, like he'd learned English when it was a different language entirely. "It's just that we need the table if you're not ordering," Mira said, hating how apologetic she sounded. "Company policy?" Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or something darker. "Of course. Forgive me. I'll have whatever you recommend." Mira blinked. In 3 years of waitressing, no one had ever asked for her recommendation. "The pie is good. Cherry, made fresh this morning." "Then I'll have the pie." She nodded and turned to go, but his voice stopped her. "What's your name?" "Mira." The answer came automatically before she could question why she was telling him. "Mira," he repeated, as though testing the weight of it on his tongue. A name meaning wonderful, or one who is looked at with admiration. From the Latin. "You know Latin?" The question escaped before she could stop it. His smile was slight, but genuine. "Among other dead languages." There was something in his tone that suggested layers she couldn't begin to unpack. Mira retreated to the kitchen, her heart hammering for reasons she couldn't explain. She plated the pie with more care than usual, adding a dollop of whipped cream and a sprig of mint she found in the back of the walk-in. When she returned to table 7, he was watching the storm through the window. Lightning split the sky, briefly illuminating his profile. For just a moment, Mira could have sworn she didn't see his reflection in the glass. She set the plate down carefully. "1 cherry pie." "Thank you, Mira." He said her name like it was something precious. She should have walked away, should have gone back to the counter and focused on her other tables. Instead, she heard herself asking, "Are you waiting for someone?" "In a manner of speaking." He cut into the pie with surgical precision. "I'm waiting for fate to make up its mind." That's cryptic. Most truths are. Mira found herself smiling despite the oddness of the conversation. Are you a philosopher or something? Or something. He took a bite of the pie, and genuine surprise crossed his face. This is excellent. I'll tell Marcus. He'll be thrilled. Thunder shook the building, and the lights flickered. For a moment, the cafe was plunged into darkness, and Mira felt a presence beside her, cold and ancient and vast beyond comprehension. Then the lights stuttered back to life, and the man was still seated at his table, watching her with those wine-dark eyes. You felt that? He said. It wasn't a question. Felt what? But her voice shook, giving lie to the words. He studied her for a long moment, something like wonder crossing his features. How very unexpected. Look, I don't know what kind of game you're playing. No game. He stood, and Mira realized he was tall, well over 6 feet, and moved with a grace that seemed almost inhuman. Tell me, Mira, do you believe in destiny? I believe in coincidence and hard work. How refreshingly practical. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a wallet of supple leather. He placed $200 bills on the table. For the pie and your time. That's way too much. Consider it an apology for what's about to happen. What's about to happen? Mira's throat tightened. The cafe door burst open, letting in a gust of wind and rain. 3 people entered, 2 men and a woman, and Mira's instincts screamed danger. They moved wrong, too fluid, too fast. Their eyes swept the cafe like predators scanning for prey, and when they landed on the man at table 7, their expressions twisted into something hungry and hateful. Dorian, the woman said, her voice like silk over razors. How careless of you, sitting here in plain sight. You're getting soft. The man, Dorian, sighed. Alessandra, I thought I made my position clear at the last council meeting. You're an abomination, one of the men spat. A king who refuses to feed is no king at all. The pieces clicked into place in Mira's mind with horrifying clarity. The lack of reflection, the cold presence, the way he moved. Vampires. She was standing in a cafe full of vampires, and judging by the conversation, Dorian was their king. You need to leave, Dorian said quietly, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Before you do something we'll all regret. The only regret, Alessandra purred, is that we waited this long. Her gaze slid to Mira, starting with the little human you've been making eyes at. Everything happened too fast. Alessandra moved in a blur of motion, crossing the cafe in less than a heartbeat. Mira didn't have time to scream. She felt cold fingers wrap around her throat, felt herself lifted off the ground. Then Dorian was there, and the force of his presence slammed into the room like a physical thing. Alessandra released Mira, who crumpled to the floor, gasping. The other customers sat frozen, their expressions blank. Some kind of compulsion, Mira realized dimly. You dare. Dorian's voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of centuries. You dare threaten an innocent in my presence? She's just food, the second man said. What do you care? Dorian moved, and Mira didn't see what he did, only that suddenly the man was across the room, embedded in the wall, not moving. The remaining male vampire lunged, and Dorian caught him by the throat mid-leap, holding him suspended in the air with one hand. Leave, Dorian commanded. Tell the council I will deal with this insurrection personally. Alessandra hesitated, her eyes darting between Dorian and her incapacitated companions. Then she smiled, cold and calculating. Of course, my king, but the girl has seen too much. Council law demands. Council law is what I say it is. Dorian released the vampire he was holding, who scrambled backward. Go. They went, dragging their unconscious companion with them. The door slammed shut, and the sound of the rain seemed suddenly very loud. Mira was still on the floor, her hand pressed to her throat, trying to process what had just happened. Dorian knelt beside her, and she flinched instinctively. I won't hurt you, he said softly. I give you my word. Your word? You're a vampire. The words came out strangled. Yes, their king. Regrettably. And they wanted to kill me because I saw you? Because you were here? The situation is more complicated than that. But essentially, yes. Mira's mind raced. She should run, should scream, should call the police, though what she would tell them she had no idea. Instead, she found herself asking, why did you come here? To this cafe? Dorian settled back on his heels, and for the first time, he looked weary. Not tired, precisely, but worn down by time and duty and the weight of immortality. Because I've been searching for something, and I had a feeling I might find it here. What were you searching for? A reason. He met her eyes. A reason to continue, to rule, to exist. The vulnerability in his voice was so unexpected that Mira forgot to be afraid. That's dark. I'm a vampire, Mira. We're rather good at dark. Despite everything, she almost laughed. This is insane. This whole night is insane. I don't disagree. Dorian stood and extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Mira took it. His skin was cool, but not unpleasantly so, and his grip was gentle as he helped her to her feet. I need to erase your memory of this encounter. It's safer for you if... No. The word came out more forcefully than she'd intended. Dorian raised an eyebrow. No? You said you were looking for a reason. Maybe this is it. Maybe I'm supposed to remember. You would choose to live with the knowledge that monsters are real, that creatures like us walk among you, predators wearing human faces? Mira thought about her life, the endless cycle of work and bills and loneliness, the feeling that she was waiting for something without knowing what. I've always known monsters were real. At least now I know what they look like. Something shifted in Dorian's expression. He studied her as though seeing her for the first time, really seeing her. Then, without warning, he reached out and touched her cheek. The contact sent a shock through Mira's system, not painful but intense, like touching a live wire. Dorian's eyes widened. He pulled back his hand as though burned. That's impossible. What? What just happened? You felt it too, didn't you? The connection? Mira nodded slowly. Her skin still tingled where he'd touched her. We've bonded, Dorian said, and he sounded shaken in a way he hadn't even when facing down 3 hostile vampires. A blood bond, but I didn't feed from you. We didn't exchange blood. It shouldn't be possible to bond without... He stopped, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that was startlingly human. In 3,000 years, I've never heard of such a thing. 3,000? Mira swayed slightly. You're 3,000 years old. Give or take a century. The early records are spotty. He caught her arm as she wobbled. Perhaps you should sit down. Perhaps I should faint. Please don't. I'm not equipped to deal with hysterical humans. I'm not hysterical, Mira protested, even as she let him guide her to a chair. I'm processing. Process faster. This bond means you're in danger. Alessandra will report back to the council, and when they learn what's happened, they'll come for you. They'll see you as leverage against me. Why would they want leverage against you? You're their king. A king they believe has grown too weak, too human. Dorian paced the cafe like a caged predator. For the past century, I've been working to change our laws, to pull us away from the old ways, to make us less monsters and more something else. Many of the council oppose these changes. They want a return to the days when we hunted freely, when humans were nothing but cattle. Comforting image? I'm trying to protect you. By erasing my memory. It's too late for that now. The bond prevents it. Dorian stopped pacing and faced her. I need to take you somewhere safe, somewhere the council can't reach you while I deal with this situation. I can't just leave. I have a job, an apartment, a life. You have a target on your back. His voice was gentle but firm. Everything you just mentioned becomes meaningless if you're dead. Mira wanted to argue, but the memory of Alessandra's hand around her throat was still fresh. How long? A few days at most. I'll call an emergency council session, address the insurrection, and establish your protection as law. Once that's done, you can return to your life. Just like that? Just like that. It was a lie, and they both knew it. The bond between them hummed with awareness, and Mira could feel his determination threaded through with something else. Regret. Longing. The sense of a man who had been alone for so long he'd forgotten what connection felt like. All right, Mira heard herself say, but I need to tell Marcus I'm leaving. Make it convincing. If anyone questions him, he needs to believe you left of your own free will. Mira found Marcus in the kitchen, scraping down the grill. She spun a quick story about a family emergency, promised to call in a few days, and grabbed her purse from her locker. Marcus barely looked up, already planning how to cover her shifts. Dorian was waiting by the door when she emerged, a dark coat draped over his arm. It's still raining. I hadn't noticed, Mira said dryly. He offered a small smile and held the coat up. After a moment, she turned and let him drape it over her shoulders. It was far too large, but it was warm and smelled of cedar and something else. Something dark and spicy and entirely masculine. Outside, the rain had gentled to a steady drizzle. A black car sat at the curb, so sleek and expensive it looked like it belonged in a movie. Dorian opened the passenger door, and Mira slid inside, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than her car. He joined her a moment later, starting the engine with a purr of power. Comfortable? Terrified, actually. That's probably wise. They drove in silence through the empty streets. The city looked different at night, Mira thought. Darker, full of shadows that might hide anything. How many other vampires were out there? How many monsters wore human faces and walked among the unsuspecting? What's it like? She asked suddenly. What's what like? Being immortal, living for thousands of years. Dorian was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, lonely. No matter how many people you meet, how many relationships you form, you always know you'll outlive them. You watch everyone you care about age and die while you remain unchanged. After a while, you stop trying, stop feeling. It's easier than the alternative. That sounds awful. It's existence. He glanced at her. I stopped truly living centuries ago. Now I simply am. Then what were you searching for when you came to the cafe? An end, perhaps. Or a beginning. I wasn't sure which I wanted more. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a building that stretched toward the sky like a blade of glass and steel. Dorian parked in a private spot and killed the engine. Welcome to my home. The elevator ride to the penthouse was swift and silent. Mira caught her reflection in the mirrored walls, small, bedraggled, utterly out of place. Beside her, Dorian was a study in elegant composure, but she could feel his tension through the bond. He was worried, she realized, afraid of what came next. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and Mira stepped into a space that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The decor was minimalist, but clearly expensive. Clean lines, dark woods, leather furniture. Art that even Mira could recognize as museum quality adorned the walls. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's a cage." Dorian moved to the windows, staring out at the city lights. "I've lived in this building for 15 years, and I can count on one hand the number of times I've felt at home here." Mira set her purse down and joined him at the window. Why stay? Because a king must maintain appearances, must project power and control. He turned to face her. "Would you like to know the truth, Mira? I'm tired. Tired of the politics and the posturing. Tired of being a symbol rather than a person. I've been contemplating abdication for years, but I'm the only thing standing between humans and the old guard. If I step down, if someone like Alessandra takes power..." He shook his head. "I can't allow that." "So you're trapped." "We're all trapped by something. Duty, fear, the weight of our choices." He studied her face. "What traps you?" The question was so unexpected that Mira answered honestly. "Inertia, mostly. I fell into waitressing after college because I needed to pay bills. Then it became comfortable, safe. I kept meaning to do something else, be something more. But years passed, and suddenly I was 27 and still serving coffee." "What would you do, if you could do anything?" "I used to want to be a photographer. Travel the world, capture moments, tell stories through images." She laughed softly. "But cameras are expensive, and travel costs money, and life got in the way." "Life has a habit of doing that." They stood in silence, two people trapped by different circumstances, connected by an impossible bond. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean and glittering with reflected light. "I should show you the guest room," Dorian said eventually. "You'll be safe here. The building has security, and my people are loyal." "Your people?" "Vampires who share my vision for the future. There aren't many of us, but we're committed to change." He led her down a hallway lined with photographs, black and white images spanning centuries. "These are memories, moments I captured over the years." Mira stopped to study them. A woman in Victorian dress laughing at something off camera. A group of soldiers during what looked like World War I, their faces young and solemn. A jazz club in what must have been the 1920s, the energy of the moment frozen in silver and shadow. "You took these?" "Photography became popular, and I found I had an aptitude for it, a way to hold on to moments that would otherwise be lost to time." "They're incredible." Mira moved from image to image, seeing the world through Dorian's eyes. "You see beauty in people." "I see humanity, the spark that makes you remarkable." He opened a door at the end of the hall. "The guest room. The bathroom is through there, and you'll find clothes in the closet that should fit. I keep them for occasions." "Occasions where you need to hide humans in your penthouse?" "Stranger things have happened." His smile was wry. "Try to rest. Tomorrow will be challenging." "What happens tomorrow?" "I call the council and end this before it escalates." He paused in the doorway. "Mira, thank you." "For what?" "For not running. For trusting me when you had every reason not to." He hesitated, as though weighing his next words, for reminding me what it feels like to care about someone's fate. Before she could respond, he was gone, the door clicking softly shut behind him. Mira stood in the center of the luxurious guest room, trying to process everything that had happened. 12 hours ago, she'd been worried about making rent. Now she was bonded to a 3,000-year-old vampire king and caught in the middle of what amounted to supernatural politics. She should be terrified. Part of her was. But a larger part felt something else entirely. A strange sense of rightness, as though all the years of drifting had been leading her to this moment. To this man who carried the weight of millennia on his shoulders and still somehow found the capacity to care about a human waitress. The bond between them pulsed gently, and through it, Mira could feel Dorian in another part of the penthouse, could sense his worry and determination, his fierce protectiveness already wrapping around her like armor. It should have felt invasive, but instead, it felt like coming home. Mira changed into the clothes she found in the closet, soft cotton pajamas that did indeed fit perfectly, and climbed into bed. The sheets were silk, the mattress the most comfortable thing she'd ever lain on. Through the window, the city sparkled like a constellation fallen to earth. Sleep should have been impossible, but the moment her head hit the pillow, exhaustion claimed her. She dreamed of dark eyes and ancient cities, of a man who had lived 1,000 lifetimes and was tired of living alone. In her dreams, she reached out to him, and he took her hand like a drowning man, grasping for salvation. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back, and she sat up quickly, heart pounding. A note on the bedside table read, "Good morning. Coffee and breakfast in the kitchen. Stay inside. I'll return by evening. D." Mira found the kitchen and the promised coffee, along with fresh fruit, pastries, and what looked like homemade quiche. She ate mechanically, her mind racing. What was Dorian doing? Was he in danger? The bond offered no answers, only a sense of distance and focused concentration. The day stretched endlessly. Mira explored the penthouse, finding a library that made her gasp with delight. Thousands of books, spanning every subject imaginable, many of them ancient and clearly priceless. She found a studio filled with camera equipment, including several vintage models that belonged in museums. She found a room that appeared to be an office, with computers and phones and all the trappings of modern business. But she found no people, no staff, no guards, no one at all. Just the silent penthouse and the city beyond the glass. As evening approached, worry began to gnaw at her. Through the bond, she could feel Dorian's presence growing closer. But there was something else too. Pain. Not physical, but emotional. A deep weariness that made her chest ache in sympathy. The elevator chimed, and Dorian stepped out. He looked exactly as he had the night before, not a hair out of place, but Mira could see the exhaustion in his eyes. "How did it go?" she asked. "About as well as expected." He moved to the bar and poured himself 2 fingers of what looked like very expensive whiskey. "The council is divided. Half support my leadership, half want me removed. Alessandra has been making alliances, promising a return to the old ways if she takes power. What does that mean for me? I've declared you under my personal protection. Anyone who touches you answers to me directly." He took a long drink. It should be enough. Most of the council won't risk open defiance, but there will be those who test the boundaries. So I'm still in danger. I won't lie to you. Yes, but less than you were. He set down the glass and finally looked at her properly. "I'm sorry. This isn't the life you chose." "Neither is yours, from what you've told me?" "No." he agreed quietly. Neither is mine. Mira crossed the room to stand before him. The bond between them thrummed with awareness, stronger now than it had been the night before. Can I ask you something? Anything. This bond, what does it mean? Beyond the connection we feel? Dorian's expression grew guarded. In normal circumstances, a blood bond creates a connection between vampire and human. The vampire can sense the human's emotions, their location, their well-being. The human receives enhanced healing and extended life. The bond typically requires an exchange of blood and willing participation from both parties. But ours is different. Ours appeared spontaneously. No blood exchange, no ritual. It simply happened. He reached out, hesitating inches from her face. May I? Mira nodded. His fingers touched her cheek, and the shock was there again, that electric current of connection. But this time, it didn't stop at awareness. Images flashed through Mira's mind. Ancient Rome at its height, the Library of Alexandria before it burned, centuries of loneliness and duty and desperate attempts to hold on to humanity. She saw Dorian's world through his eyes and understood, finally, the weight he carried. Then she felt him in her mind, gentle and careful, seeing her memories in return, her childhood, her dreams, her fears, the loneliness she hid behind competence and humour, the sense of waiting for something she couldn't name. He pulled back, and they were both breathing hard. That's never happened before, Dorian said. The bond is growing stronger, evolving. Why? I don't know. He looked troubled. I've sent inquiries to the oldest vampires I know, the scholars and historians. If there's precedent for this, they'll find it. Until then, we're navigating uncharted territory. That should terrify me, but it doesn't. No. Mira smiled slightly. It doesn't. The days fell into a pattern. Dorian would leave each evening to attend to council business, and Mira would explore the penthouse, losing herself in his library or practicing with the cameras she found in the studio. She discovered she hadn't forgotten her love of photography. It had simply been buried under years of survival. She began documenting the view from the penthouse windows, capturing the way light played across the city at different times of day. The work felt good, purposeful in a way waitressing never had. Dorian would return each night, and they would talk. About his long life, about her short one, about the nature of immortality and the precious brevity of human existence, about art and music and the way the world had changed over millennia. The bond between them deepened with each conversation. Mira learned to sense his moods even when he tried to hide them. She felt his frustration with the council, his worry for her safety, his growing attachment that he tried desperately to deny. Because that was the thing neither of them wanted to acknowledge. They were falling for each other. Mira, who had spent years convinced that love was something that happened to other people, found herself drawn to this ancient creature who had forgotten how to feel until she reminded him. And Dorian, who had closed off his heart centuries ago to protect himself from loss, found himself cracking open like ice in spring. A week after the incident at the cafe, everything changed. Mira woke in the middle of the night to the sound of breaking glass. She bolted upright, heart racing, and through the bond felt Dorian's spike of alarm. He burst into her room a moment later, and the look on his face made her blood run cold. We need to leave. Now. What's happening? Alessandra has made her move. She's coming here with half the council behind her. He pulled her out of bed, not roughly, but with urgency. I have a safe house outside the city. If we can reach it... The elevator chimed. Too late. Dorian pushed Mira behind him as the doors opened. Alessandra stepped out, flanked by a dozen vampires. Her smile was triumphant. Really, Dorian? Did you think I wouldn't discover your little hideaway eventually? This is neutral ground, Dorian said, his voice deadly calm. Attack me here, and you violate the oldest laws of our kind. Laws you've been systematically dismantling. Alessandra's eyes found Mira. And all for what? A human. You've gone soft, my king. Weak. The council has voted. You are removed from power, effective immediately. The council doesn't have the authority. We do, when you've abandoned your duties, when you've bonded with human cattle, when you've forgotten what we are. She gestured, and the vampires with her spread out, surrounding Dorian and Mira. We'll be merciful. You may live, provided you sever the bond and submit to the new order. And if I refuse? Then you'll die, along with your pet. The air crackled with tension. Mira could feel Dorian's power gathering, dark and vast and terrible. He could fight them, she realized. Could probably kill half of them before they brought him down. But he would die in the process, and so would she. There's another option, Mira heard herself say. Everyone turned to stare at her. Alessandra laughed. The cattle speaks. How novel. Mira, don't, Dorian said quietly, but she stepped out from behind him, meeting Alessandra's contemptuous gaze. You want him to prove he's still a true vampire? Still capable of being the king you need? And how do you propose he do that? Mira's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break free from her chest. But the answer was clear, had been clear from the moment she'd bonded with Dorian. This was why fate had brought them together, not to find happiness, but to save each other in the only way possible. He feeds from me, willingly, completely, in front of all of you. Mira's voice didn't shake. A true blood bond, not whatever this is, and you acknowledge his kingship and leave us in peace. Alessandra's eyes widened. You would offer yourself, knowing what he is, what we all are, to save his life and prove his strength. Yes. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Dorian grabbed her arm, spinning her to face him. No, absolutely not. You don't understand what you're offering. I understand perfectly. Mira met his dark eyes. You told me feeding is intimate, that it creates a bond deeper than anything I can imagine, that it would change me, maybe make me something more than human, but less than vampire. I understand all of it, and I'm still offering. You would be tied to me for the rest of your very long life. Sounds better than dying tonight. Mira, do you have a better plan? He didn't. She could feel it through the bond, his desperation, his fear for her, his complete lack of alternatives. This is unexpected, Alessandra said, but acceptable. If our king still has the strength to feed properly, to take power from human blood as we all do, then perhaps he is fit to rule. But it must be a complete feeding, no half measures. Dorian closed his eyes. When he opened them, they had darkened to the color of midnight. If I do this, if I accept her offering, you will honor your word. The council will accept my rule and leave Mira under my protection. You will swear it by the old laws. Agreed, Alessandra said. Several other vampires echoed her. Then we have an accord. Dorian turned back to Mira, and his expression was anguished. I need you to be certain. Once I begin, there's no going back. You'll be changed, bound to me in ways that transcend the physical. Your life will never be the same. It hasn't been the same since you walked into my cafe, Mira said softly. I choose this. I choose you. Something broke in his expression, the last of his resistance crumbling. He pulled her close, one hand cradling the back of her head, and bent his forehead to touch hers. "I will make this as painless as possible. And I promise you, Mira, I will spend every day of your extended life making sure you never regret this choice." "I know." He guided her to the couch and settled beside her, positioning her so she was half reclined against him. The vampires gathered in a loose circle, watching with hungry fascination. Alessandra's expression had shifted from contemptuous to cautiously impressed. Dorian's hand was gentle as he tilted Mira's head, exposing her throat. "Relax. Don't fight it. The more you surrender, the less it will hurt." Mira closed her eyes and reached for the bond between them, opening herself completely. She felt his hesitation, his guilt, his fierce protectiveness. Then she felt his nature assert itself, the predator that lived beneath the civilized veneer, ancient and powerful and hungry. His lips brushed her throat, cool and soft. Then his fangs, sharp and strange, and unlike anything she'd expected, pierced her skin. The pain was there, bright and sharp, but it faded almost immediately, replaced by something else entirely. Warmth spread through her body like liquid sunlight. She felt Dorian's presence in her mind, stronger than ever before, and opened to him completely. Let him see everything, her fear and her courage, her loneliness and her hope, her growing feelings for him that she hadn't dared to name. And through the bond, she felt him too, felt 3,000 years of memories and emotion, the weight of immortality and duty, the slow death of hope. But she also felt something new, something that had begun the night they met and had been growing ever since. Love. Hesitant and uncertain and terrified, but real. Dorian drank deeply, and Mira felt her life force flowing into him, strengthening him. But it wasn't a taking, it was a sharing. Energy moved between them in a circuit, his power flowing into her even as her blood flowed into him. She was changing, she realized, becoming something new, something neither fully human nor vampire, but something in between. When he finally pulled away, his lips stained crimson, his eyes were wide with wonder. "Extraordinary," he breathed. "You're extraordinary." Mira touched her throat. The wounds were already healing, knitting closed with preternatural speed. She felt different, stronger, sharper, more alive than she'd ever been. The world seemed brighter somehow, her senses heightened. "How do you feel?" Dorian asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Like I could run a marathon, or fly, or both." Mira laughed, giddy with the rush of new sensations. "Is this normal?" "Nothing about this is normal." He helped her sit up, steadying her. "You should be weak, disoriented. Instead, you're radiating power." Alessandra approached slowly, her earlier contempt replaced by something like awe. "The bond is complete. I can see it, the connection between you. It's unlike anything I've witnessed in 5 centuries. She inclined her head toward Dorian. "You have proven yourself, my king. The old blood still runs strong in you." "Then we're done here." Dorian's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Take your followers and go. Remember your oath." "As you command." Alessandra's smile was thin. "But know this, the council will be watching. This human of yours has become something unprecedented. That makes her dangerous." "Then it's fortunate she's under my protection." The vampires filed out, taking the elevator back down to whatever darkness they'd emerged from. When the last of them was gone, the penthouse fell silent. Dorian turned to Mira, and his carefully maintained composure cracked. "I'm sorry. I never wanted—" She silenced him with a finger to his lips. Don't. I made my choice, and I'd make it again. You don't understand what you've given up. Your normal life, your humanity, was overrated. Mira smiled. Dorian, I've spent 27 years sleepwalking through existence. Now I finally feel awake. If that means I'm not fully human anymore, I can live with that. You're not afraid? Terrified, she admitted. But not of you. Never of you. He pulled her close then, wrapping his arms around her as though she might disappear if he loosened his grip. Mira felt his heart beating, slower than hers, but steady and strong. She hadn't realized vampires had heartbeats until that moment. What happens now? She asked against his chest. Now you recover. The transformation takes time, days, maybe weeks. You'll experience changes, enhanced senses, increased strength, accelerated healing. Your aging will slow dramatically. You'll live for centuries, barring violence or accident. And you'll be there? For all of it? If you'll have me. Mira pulled back to look at him properly. His dark eyes were uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. This ancient being, this king of monsters, was afraid she might reject him. I think, she said carefully, that I've been waiting for you my entire life. I just didn't know it until you walked into that cafe. Something shifted in his expression. Hope, tentative and fragile. Mira, I need you to understand. This bond between us, it's not compulsion. You still have free will. You can choose to leave, to build a life separate from mine. The connection will remain, but you're not obligated. She kissed him. It was impulse and certainty combined, a leap of faith into an unknown future. His lips were cool against hers, but they warmed quickly, and when he kissed her back, it was with 3,000 years of loneliness finally finding its answer. When they broke apart, Dorian was smiling, truly smiling, with joy rather than irony. That was unexpected. Get used to it. I have a feeling I'm going to be full of surprises. I look forward to discovering them. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. But for now, you need rest. The transformation is taxing, even with the bond supporting you. He was right. Now that the adrenaline was fading, Mira could feel exhaustion creeping in. Not the weakness she should have felt after losing blood, but a deep weariness that sank into her bones. Dorian carried her to the bedroom, his bedroom this time, not the guest room, and settled her on sheets that smelled of cedar and midnight. He lay beside her, fully clothed, and pulled her close. Sleep, he murmured. I'll keep watch. Will you be here when I wake up? I'll be here for as long as you want me. Forever, then. She felt his smile against her hair. Forever is a long time. Good thing we have plenty of it. Mira drifted into sleep, cocooned in safety, the bond between them humming like a lullaby. In her dreams, she saw the future, not clearly, but in impressions, travel and art and adventure. Standing beside Dorian as he led his people into a new age, growing into her power and discovering what she was becoming. And through it all, love, the kind that transcended species and time, that burned bright enough to light up 3,000 years of darkness. She woke to sunlight and the sound of the city below. Dorian was beside her still, his eyes open, watching her with an expression of such tenderness it made her chest ache. Good morning, he said softly. Good morning. Mira stretched, marveling at how good she felt, stronger, sharper, more herself than she'd ever been. How long was I asleep? 14 hours. And you stayed the whole time. I told you I would. He reached out to trace the place on her throat where he'd bitten her. The wounds had healed completely, leaving only the faintest silvery scars. How do you feel? Different. Better. She caught his hand. Not regretful. Relief flashed across his features. I worried you might wake up angry, might realize what you'd sacrificed. The only thing I sacrificed was a life I wasn't living anyway. Mira sat up. So what now? Do I need to avoid garlic? Stay out of churches? Start sleeping in a coffin? Dorian laughed, the sound warm and genuine. You've been watching too many movies. You're not a vampire. You're something else, something new. You can eat normal food, though you might find your tastes changing. Sunlight won't harm you, though you might become more sensitive to it. You'll need to feed eventually, but not on blood. The bond sustains you. Feed on what? Energy, emotion, life force. He helped her to her feet. I'll teach you. We have time. They spent the morning exploring the edges of Mira's new abilities. She could move faster than before, though not with vampire speed. Her senses were heightened. She could hear conversations in apartments several floors below, could smell the coffee brewing in the penthouse kitchen from the bedroom. Colours seemed brighter, sounds clearer, as though someone had turned up the resolution on reality. But the most significant change was the bond. It had deepened into something profound, a connection that allowed them to sense each other's emotions and, with concentration, even share thoughts. Dorian taught her to shield, to control the flow of information, to maintain her sense of self within the connection. You're adapting remarkably well, he said as they sat in his studio, Mira experimenting with one of his vintage cameras. Most humans would be overwhelmed. Most humans didn't spend 27 years feeling like they were waiting for something. Mira snapped a photo of him, catching the way afternoon light sculpted his features. This feels like what I was waiting for. Not the vampire stuff specifically, but you. This. A purpose. And what purpose is that? I'm still figuring it out. She lowered the camera. But I think it has something to do with change. You said you've been working to pull vampire society away from the old ways. Maybe I can help with that. You want to involve yourself in supernatural politics? Dorian looked skeptical. It's dangerous, Mira. What happened with Alessandra was just the beginning. There will be others who see you as a weakness to exploit. Then we prove them wrong? She crossed to where he sat and took his hands. You've been fighting this battle alone for a century. Let me stand with you. Let me be the proof that humans and vampires can coexist, that we can be more than predator and prey. You would take that risk, knowing it might cost you everything? I'd take any risk if it meant building a better world. And besides, she smiled, I have the king of vampires watching my back. I think I'll be fine. Dorian pulled her into his lap, his arms encircling her. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Can't I be both? Yes, he said, kissing her forehead. Yes, I rather think you are. The days turned into weeks, and Mira settled into her new existence. She didn't return to the cafe. That life felt like something that had happened to a different person. Instead, she threw herself into learning about the supernatural world she'd been drawn into. Dorian introduced her to his allies, the vampires who shared his vision for the future. They were wary at first, uncertain what to make of this human who had bonded with their king. But Mira had never been good at backing down from a challenge, and she met their skepticism with determination. She attended council meetings as Dorian's consort, a position that had never existed before and caused considerable controversy. She spoke eloquently about human rights and the need for supernatural beings to integrate rather than dominate. She proposed new laws and frameworks for peaceful coexistence. Not everyone was convinced. Alessandra's faction remained hostile, viewing Mira as an aberration, and Dorian's continued involvement with her as weakness. There were attempts to undermine her influence, whisper campaigns, suggesting she'd enthralled Dorian somehow, that the bond was manipulation rather than genuine connection. But with each challenge, Mira and Dorian's partnership grew stronger. They learned to work together, to anticipate each other's moves, to support each other through the political battles. The bond between them became a weapon they wielded with precision, proof that vampire and human could be equals rather than master and servant. 6 months after that first night in the cafe, Dorian called an emergency council session. Mira stood beside him as he addressed the assembled vampires, her hand in his. "For 3,000 years," Dorian said, his voice carrying the weight of millennia, "I have led our people. I have seen empires rise and fall, watched humanity evolve from scattered tribes to a global civilization. And through it all, we have remained in the shadows, convinced that we must hide our nature to survive." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But the world is changing. Humans are asking questions, seeking answers to mysteries we've kept hidden. It's only a matter of time before our existence is revealed. When that happens, we have a choice. We can meet them as monsters, as the predators they fear, or we can meet them as something else." "As what?" Alessandra demanded. "Equals? They're cattle, Dorian. Food. You've forgotten this basic truth." "No." Mira stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "He's remembered something more important. That humans and vampires aren't enemies. We're two sides of the same coin. You need us to survive, and we need you to show us what we could become." She gestured to herself. "Look at me. I'm not fully human anymore, but I'm not vampire either. I'm proof that we can meet in the middle, that connection is possible. That love," she glanced at Dorian, "is possible." The chamber erupted in argument. Some vampires shouted their support, others their disgust. But Mira stood her ground, Dorian's presence beside her like a pillar of stone. When the chaos finally settled, it was an older vampire, one who Dorian had introduced as Marcus, nearly 2,000 years old, who spoke. "The girl makes a compelling argument, and like it or not, she represents our future. Dorian's bond with her has created something unprecedented. We would be fools to ignore the implications." "What implications?" Someone called out. "That we can evolve, that we're not locked into the roles we've played for millennia." Marcus looked at Mira with something approaching respect. "I vote to support the King's initiative, to begin the process of integration." One by one, other vampires added their voices. Not all. Alessandra and her faction remained opposed. But enough. More than half the council. Dorian's hand tightened on Mira's. Through the bond, she felt his relief and joy, tempered by the knowledge that this was just the beginning. The fight for change would take decades, maybe centuries. But they had time, they had each other, and they had hope. That night, back in the penthouse, Mira stood at the windows watching the city lights. Dorian joined her, slipping his arms around her waist. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For walking into my life, for choosing to stay, for giving me a reason to keep fighting." Mira turned in his arms. "You gave me the same thing, a reason to stop drifting and start living." "I love you." The words seemed to surprise him as much as her. "I didn't think I was capable of it anymore, but you've proven me wrong, about so many things." "I love you too." Mira smiled. Even if you are a 3,000-year-old vampire who drinks overpriced whiskey and has terrible taste in modern art. My taste in modern art is impeccable. It's really not. They laughed together, and in that moment, Mira understood what true happiness felt like. Not the absence of challenges or fear, but the presence of someone who made facing them worthwhile. "What do you want to do tomorrow?" Dorian asked. "We have the whole day free." "I want to take photographs. Real ones, out in the world. I want to start documenting the changes we're trying to make. Tell the story of what's possible when different worlds collide." "An ambitious project. I learned from an ambitious king." Dorian kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, his eyes were warm with affection and something else. Gratitude, perhaps, or wonder that after 3,000 years of existence, he'd finally found his home. "Forever is going to be quite an adventure with you," he said. Mira grinned. "That's the plan." And outside, the city glittered with possibility, full of humans and vampires and creatures unknown, all of them navigating the thin line between darkness and light. Somewhere in the shadows, Alessandra plotted and schemed. Somewhere in the supernatural underground, whispers spread of the human who had bonded with a king and changed everything. But in the penthouse high above it all, Mira and Dorian stood together, bound by blood and choice and love that transcended the boundaries of species. They had each been lost in their own ways, him in immortality, her in inertia. Together, they had found something neither had believed possible, a future worth fighting for, and someone worth sharing it with. The path ahead would be difficult. There would be opposition and danger, setbacks and struggles. But they would face it all together, the vampire king and the human waitress who had accidentally bonded and discovered that sometimes the best love stories are the ones that were never supposed to happen at all. And in a small cafe across the city, Marcus the cook wondered whatever happened to his best waitress, never knowing that she was out there changing the world. One photograph, one council meeting, one act of courage at a time. The future was unwritten, full of darkness and light in equal measure. But for the first time in 3,000 years, Dorian looked forward to it. And for the first time in 27 years, Mira felt truly alive. Together, they would build something new from the ashes of the old world. Together, they would prove that love could bridge any divide. Together, they would show both humans and vampires what was possible when you dared to reach across the darkness and take someone's hand. The bond between them pulsed like a second heartbeat, strong and steady and eternal. And in that moment, standing at the window with the city spread before them like a promise, they both knew one thing with absolute certainty. They were exactly where they were meant to be.